Dear friend, do you not get it? There are two ways to live, and your leaders are under the wrong master, and they serve the wrong Lord. They do all they can to bring you under the suzerainty of the one whom they follow. You follow them, which puts you under the master they are under. Don't you get it? This is what the world is about. Two masters want you for their kingdoms. Think about it. You see a multitude of leaders. You see a wide variety of systems. These systems are not disconnected nor without similarities. If there is a plethora of systems, there is only one system composed of a multitude of variations. We do not actually have a wide range of choices. Not if there is truth in this world, not if there is a right and a wrong. There can only be one truth, but lies can be without number. If there were actually a large number of political and economic and religious choices, none of them could be true. They would only be options, and none of them would have any more value than the other. However, one could be true and the rest false. The false choices would have this in common: they all diverge from the truth in some way or other. But then the question would need to be asked: how do we diverge from the truth, and why would we? What prompts a lie to be told? If there is a large number of leaders, there is only one kind of leader. You may not entirely understand the logic of this, but you know instinctively that this is how the world works. If a person is a leader, he follows a particular type. This reality is formed from three great pillars. The problems we see in one, we see in all. These three great pillars of society, religion, politics and economics, are bifurcated. No matter the talk about a middle way, every actual option we encounter falls left or right. We know this. When someone starts a new party, we know if it is left or right, and, if we are on that side of the issue, we fear the new party will steal votes from the existing party on the same side of the issues. It is not a mistake that our politics, economics, and even our religious affiliations can all be placed on one side of a two-sided system. God created truth, because that is what He created. The lies are many, but there is only one truth. Even if we claim there is my truth and your truth, and that everyone has their truth, that is still your truth, and you believe everyone who argues differently is a liar. Even when you say they are not, you are still only proselytizing for your view of things. God created reality in logic. God is not constrained by logic, but we are, or there could be no existence. Existence must be logical because this is how we think. It is the only way we can think, because the way we think will invariably lead to God, if we think logically. The reality is people must literally give up on sanity to deny the existence of God. The apparent instability of atheists is not subjective, they are unstable. They must be. The insanity of atheists and their ilk, that is non-Christians, is not easy to understand, and so we will elaborate. If something is to exist, it has to have an identity. If it is X, it cannot be Y. This, to some degree, at least, is digitalism. Atheists think in what could be called the analog way. In an analogous system, things are related. What we see in an analog system is variations. This is also called relativism. Its best-known form is cultural relativity, a position that views all cultures as mere variations of a theme. This, however, does not make logical sense. To have variations or relativity, there must be a norm, there has to be a basic form from which all the others vary from. But this is not something that relativists want to agree to. If they did, they would be required to admit the basic or original form is the true and natural form, and the rest are bastardizations. We view all dog breeds as variations of a natural and original dog ancestor. But then what of cultures? Is there an original culture or a true culture that all others stem from? Even if we believe all cultures arose independently, there is still the possibility of a Platonic ideal. These cultures could still be modifications of what is the true culture. For example, what if a culture is cannibalistic, or built around a warrior culture? Is this still a valid culture and as equally original as one that has no crime or inequality and consistently produces quality items? Even the most ardent believer in cultural relativity will be hard-pressed to look at these options as equally valid or desirable. There are things we value and other things we value less. But is this just cultural programming? Is it just that Westerners have learned to appreciate certain things through constant repetition? Is peace no more valuable or moral than war? This is the question: is there an ideal we all strive to, no matter how imperfectly, or is there no way to judge others or how they live? Is everything subjective, devoid of all objectivity and universality? We cannot answer this conclusively unless we fully understand the question and its implications, because the probability is we will think the question is being asked from within a relativistic framework. This is the problem we have: we ask these kinds of questions from a position we rarely acknowledge. Of course, if we are Christian, we will believe there is a right and a wrong way to live. If we are something else, then even if we think there is a right way to live, it will be grounded in the relativity of war. But let me explain. We have been saying that relativity does not make sense unless there is an absolute. Relativity does not make sense unless it can be contrasted with an absolute. So, we think cultures are relative and that none is better than another. But what does this mean if there is not an absolute and best to compare these options to, so as to declare they are all equal? This is what relativists will rarely acknowledge, that is, their utter and complete dependency for an absolute truth to exist, for their relativity to make sense. When we ask which culture is the best one, and we say all are equal, what we are saying is that within a relativistic system, all cultures are equally valid. Equal in what sense and to what? How can different things be equal, when by definition, they are different? We could say all the integers between 1 and 9 are equal. That is both true and absurd. It is absurd because they are different numbers with different values, but as symbols with no meaning, they are equal. But to say they are equal is to remove from them their identity as numbers. The same thing holds true when discussing cultures. They are all relative from a metaphysical position. It requires we reject their identity as places where people live. If we look at cultures from a theistic or even humanistic framework, it is obvious some are better places to live than others. However, this is still too subjective. We can still be accused of taking a white man's viewpoint or working from a Western set of values. What is rarely discussed is that in a relativistic framework, those positions are totally acceptable. The only reason why they would not be acceptable is that you are looking at the situation from some other absolutist or sovereign perspective. Perhaps you think that African culture is as good or better than Western culture. You are racially biased in favor of that which is black. In fact, if one is a relativist, the only choice we have is to be biased in favor of that which favors our bias. What grounds has a white person for favoring tribal cultures if all cultures are equally valid? But that is the problem. This position works fine when we are critical of someone favoring one form of culture over another, all cultures being equal, but it does not work as well when we reject a particular culture. We have no grounds for saying someone ought not to dismiss a way of life. Because obviously, by saying this we do indicate there is a culture or type of culture which we approve of. Indeed, the approval of culture is a given, as we must live, and if we live, we must live in a particular way, which is a culture. The real difference between a relativistic system and an absolutist or Christian one is that with the relativistic system the only grounds we have for preferring one culture over another is history and experiential. In one case we favor that which is familiar, and in the other, that which gives us sensory pleasure. By definition, one cannot have logical or rational grounds for preferring one culture over another. If one did, cultures would not be all the same and there would be logical and reasonable grounds for choosing one, rather than another. And so, there are two systems: the one is relativistic, in which there is no reason to prefer one way of living over another, and the other is ecclesiastical. In this latter we live as we think God requires. Life, in this latter example, is all about learning how to govern what we have in the name of God. Reality is composed of or contains two kinds of management systems, each is based on one of the two masters. Satan is nothing more than a rejection of the truth of God. As lies, his entire system is composed of irrelevant choices, which means one pick is as good as the other. The other choice is the system God devised for us. It is logical, moral, and coherent. It can also be empirically proven to be true. God's system is ecclesiastical. It is absolute in that if we are abiding in His truth, we create value for Him. This constitutes building His church. If we do not follow Him, we live in lies and we become parasitic. The line between the parasite and the ecclesiastic is the line between truth and lies and between the system of God and the system of Satan.